Hello, and welcome to Healing the Cultures workshop, Doing Pro-Life Education the Easy Way. I'm Camille Pauley. I'll be your host. I am the Director, President, and CEO of Healing the Culture. We are a national, actually an international nonprofit corporation. We have offices in Chicago, Illinois, in Seattle, Washington, and in Rapid City, South Dakota. And our purpose, our raison d'etre, if you will, is to teach pro-life education in a way that is rational, that is logical, that is also appealable in people's hearts, that grabs them in the heart and grabs them in the head to help them want to embrace pro-life principles and want to live an ethical and just life, observing and acknowledging the dignity and the worth and the value and the legal rights of the unborn child, of the elderly, the terminally ill, and the disabled. So what we work to do is to help people become authentically pro-life, to help them become, if you will, permanently pro-life, and to help them become deeply pro-life. Those are our three most important values at Healing the Culture. So what I want to do in this workshop today is to help you be able to teach pro-life education to the people in your circles. Some of you are parents, some are grandparents, we have some teachers, religious educators, some of you work in government, some of you work in institutions, educational institutions and business organizations, some of you are in leadership. In any way that you move and work, you will be able to find a way to teach these pro-life ethics to your circles. And we have something for everybody. So there are educational tools for the very young, all the way down to kindergarten, even preschool. We have materials for high school, for college, and for adults. And I'm going to be sharing all of that with you today and make this a really practical workshop, and then leave you with some free tools that you can use in your home, in your school, in your church or parish, in your organization, in small group studies, or even on your own. So let me back up a little bit and tell you about who we are at Healing the Culture. We were founded in 2003 by Father Robert Spitzer, who is a Jesuit and a philosopher. And he really believed that you cannot change the law on abortion or euthanasia or assisted suicide permanently, and in a way that won't just get reversed if you don't first change human hearts, if you don't first have a culture of people on a massive scale where people are actually living for what is worthy of them instead of living for things that are beneath them. So he founded this program, which we refer to as the Life Principles, which is a curriculum, and then we founded the organization. We're going to go through a little bit later about how you can connect with the organization, but let's go through first a little bit about the curriculum itself. So I want to take you through just a little like a crash course in what we do at Healing the Culture, what we call the Life Principles. What do we do and how we teach it? Well, the basis of everything we do starts with what Father Spitzer calls the 4 levels of happiness. Human happiness is what motivates us in everything we do. It drives us towards who we're going to become, what our career is going to be, whether or not we're going to get married, what kind of goods we're pursuing. All of that depends on how we view happiness. So happiness is the driver of every other important, significant term in our lives, whether it's an individual term or a cultural term. So the way you define, for example, success, or how you view quality of life, or what you think freedom is, or love, or what you believe about human rights, or even the human person itself. All of those things are shaped by what you think happiness means, what you believe will give you meaning or purpose in life. And so Father Spitzer developed what he called 4 levels of happiness. There are 4 different drivers in the human person, 4 different things that we desire that lead to a sense of fulfillment or happiness. The first is physical pleasure and possessions. Okay, that would be anything tangible. There's my daughter when she got $10 on her birthday, something physical and tangible, right? There's my 2 girls on a ride, something that's maybe stimulating physically and exciting and thrilling, right? There's something delicious, cupcakes, okay? Or getting something physical or tangible, a doll or a car or a new house, or something that you've always wanted. That would be happiness level 1. And it's good, there's nothing wrong with it. We need it for our bodies to sustain and to stay alive. But we need a little bit more than that, because if we only focus on level 1, we will end up in crisis. And I'm not going to talk a lot about that crisis today. I'm just giving you an overview. But living for level 1 leads us to boredom, feelings like we're living beneath ourselves, low self-esteem, restlessness. So we need more. Human beings desire ego gratification. It's the kind of happiness that comes from feeling good about myself. So power, popularity, being liked, being in control, being admired, winning, being better than others, being successful or accomplished. All of those things are a kind of happiness. There's me when I very first learned how to carry my daughter in the baby carrier without dropping her. And I had a sense of pride and accomplishment. There's my daughter when she won a pink ribbon at the fair for a drawing that she did. And that's that look in her face that, I did it. I accomplished something. And level 2 is also very, very good. We need that in order to pursue good things in our life. We want to, discover cures for diseases. We'd like to build better bridges. We'd like to, advance civilization. And so it's important for us to have a sense of accomplishment because that drives us forward. But if we're only living for level 2, or we emphasize it as the most important thing in our life, we will become angry when we cannot achieve what we think that we should. We'll become angry at ourselves and others. We can become jealous, have contempt for those who are better than we are, live a life of aggression where we're constantly trying to achieve, because without it, we lose our very sense of self. We become anxious about the competition. A life becomes a constant competition. We become suspicious of others, even those whom we love. And then we begin to resent others and perhaps even God. So we need more than level 2. We need something to direct level 2. And that would be level 3, doing a good beyond myself. Now, notice how level 3 is a corrector of level 1 and 2. Okay, when level 1 and 2 were ends in themselves, they became very selfish, aggressive, very empty, and frankly, not fulfilling. But with level 3 as their end, they properly order themselves. They become balanced. I'm not wanting to succeed for the sake of my own ego gratification. I'm wanting to succeed for the sake of doing a good beyond myself, making a better world. Okay? But good beyond itself, as good as it is, it manifests in 5 different ways. We want truth, we want love, we want justice, we seek beauty, we seek a home, right? A sense of a solidarity. And there's nothing wrong with that. These are good things to seek: goodness, truth, beauty, justice, right? All these things are good, lead to compassion and generosity and creativity. But the problem with level 3 is that we want it perfectly. We want absolute truth and unconditional love, perfect justice, flawless beauty, and eternal home. And you can't get that from each other. We need more than these things just simply, imperfectly. We want them absolutely. And human beings can't satisfy that desire for perfection. So we will end up in crisis, disappointment, frustration, dashed expectations, cynicism. We will end up feeling like life has an end that I desire, which can never be achieved. And we will end up in despair. So what do? The ultimate good. That's level 4. That's the desire for God, for perfect truth and love and justice and beauty at home. And it's the leap to faith and recognizing God really does exist, and He is unconditional love and perfect mercy and justice, and only He can fulfill me. Okay, so there's a picture of my daughter when she had her first confession, coming out of the confessional. You can see that joy on her face. I have been forgiven, and God loves me, and He is merciful. And that sense she had, she came and hugged me immediately, and just felt that God just in her being and in her soul, loving and forgiving her. And that was a beautiful thing. Okay? So where does this go from here? Human beings desire all 4 levels, and they're all good. The problem is when we live for level 1 and 2 above level 3 and 4. So part of our role as educators in the pro-life movement is to help move people out of level 1 and 2 as dominant and into level 3 and 4. And we have a lot of ways to help you do that. But if we don't do that work first, if we don't first try to identify where people are going wrong there with how they're interpreting happiness, meaning in life, if we don't first identify where they're making mistakes by putting level 1 ahead of level 3 and 4, or level 2 ahead of level 3 and 4, and living beneath themselves, then we miss the whole point that they are now defining words in ways that are beneath them, that will lead to their misery and the destruction of civilization. And I truly mean that. The way people define happiness will lead to their definitions of success, quality of life, love, how they define suffering, how they view ethics, freedom, personhood, rights, and the common good. You add happiness to that list, and that's what we call the 10 categories. Father Spitzer calls the 10 categories of cultural, the 10 categories of culture. And all of those categories are essential to move people into a level 3-4 perspective if we want to build a pro-life culture. Let me give you an example. If people are living for level 1 and 2, how are they going to view success? I am successful when I have achieved more than you have. I am successful when I have the things that I desire to keep me physically content. I am successful when I have won a competition, when I have achieved the ladder of success in my career. That's success. And if something's going to get in the way of that success, then I become a failure. I don't just fail at something, I become a failure. And nobody wants their whole life to be summed up by the word failure. So what might pose a threat to my opportunities for success in level 1 and 2? A disability, a baby, marriage, commitment, maybe a terminal illness, maybe responsibility for an elderly parent. Those things begin to threaten my success. And when they threaten my success, they threaten my quality of life. My quality of life is going to plummet. I cannot possibly be happy and enjoy the true meaning and purpose of life if I am terminally ill, if I am disabled, if I am responsible for an elderly person, if I have to pour my life into taking care of a child, if I have to be responsible to the commitment of marriage, right? And of course, that's going to taint my definition of love, right? Love now is focused on me. Love is all about me, right? Empower me, get me ahead, acknowledge me, reward me. That's what love is. Instead of seeing love as a gift of myself for the good beyond myself. And that's going to taint the way I view suffering. Suffering is now seen as something to avoid at all costs. There's no meaning or purpose in suffering unless it can get me ahead, make me more powerful, or acquire more goods for myself. And of course, that's going to affect how you view the term ethics. Well, what's right versus what's wrong? Well, it all depends. I mean, is it going to lead to more suffering? Is it going to diminish my quality of life? Is it going to help you love me more? Is it going to give me more success in life? It all depends. Right and wrong now become a weight of, or a balance of what's good for me, instead of ethics being something in and of the rightness or wrongness being intrinsic to the act itself. And of course, that's going to all affect the way we view freedom. Do you see how these words all impact each other? Freedom, right? When am I most free? Well, I'm obviously most free when you're letting me do whatever it is that I need to do to achieve success, quality of life, and love, and avoid suffering. And anytime you're getting in the way of that with laws, rules, responsibilities, constraints, obligations, commitments, then you are infringing on my freedom. That view of freedom is called freedom from. Freedom to me is freedom from obligations, restraints, commitments, and responsibilities. And of course, that's going to affect the way I view the human person. You are a problem. You're not a mystery, an intrinsic goodness in and of yourself, right? A little eternity, a little image and likeness of God with your own intrinsic dignity and goodness, right? And your own inalienable rights. You are a problem. And so I will begin to define the person in terms of something material, right? You're a gathering of cells. You're a lump of tissue, right? You are a physical being on earth. But we begin to see the person, instead of as a mystery, we see the person as a problem. And of course, that's going to affect the way we view rights, human rights. Okay, who has rights? Well, that kind of depends. Are you useful to the world? Can you get us ahead? Are you able to contribute to society? Are you going to cause problems? Human rights are given to people who deserve them. And if you don't deserve them, then you don't get them. Okay. And so you could see already how this has happened with the unborn child. The child gets in the way of my goals, my career. And so, well, maybe you don't have any human rights, because after all, you're small, you can't speak for yourself. You don't have, as much physical function as I do. You certainly don't have as much of an IQ as I do yet. And so, maybe you don't have any human rights. And of course, that is going to change the way we view the common good. There is no common good, right? It's all about my personal independent good. That becomes very, very dangerous. So how do we change that? we need to move people into a level 3 and level 4 view of those terms. I'm not going to get into that today. I'd love to go through those level 3, 4 definitions of those terms, but I'll show you later where you can go through a whole course. All I want to do at this point is just show you how when people embrace happiness level 3 and 4 views of happiness, success, quality of life, love, freedom, etc., it leads them to embrace 10 universal principles of civilization. Right? They're universal because they are true and they apply no matter where you live, no matter when you live, and no matter who you are, what race you are, how old you are, whether you're male or female, they apply to everyone, everywhere, at all times. They are principles because they are core fundamental truths that ground all of our other beliefs and our the culture itself. Okay? And these universal principles are necessary for civilization. If we break apart these principles, if we start to avoid them or deny them, if we stop living for these principles and stop upholding them, we will actually begin to threaten civilization itself. Every one of these principles are necessary for a healthy civilization. And so you really don't want to go violating these principles. What are they? Okay, well, there's a principle of happiness. We call it the principle of beneficence, and it was first articulated by Jesus, the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, real happiness comes from giving myself away for the good of other people, not from sacrificing other people for the good of myself. All this is simply doing is saying level 3 and 4 are more worthy of my identity and my commitment than level 1 and 2. Level 1 and 2 are good, but only as ends to a greater means. There are also 3 principles of logic that help us define what a human person is. Who is a human person? How can I know, who I am supposed to be doing good for if I don't even know who a human person is? So in order to help define a human person and to see the logical truth, the undeniable truth that an unborn child is a full human being and a full human person at the moment of fertilization, at the moment of conception, we need to take people through 3 basic principles of logic. Non-contradiction, which shows that something cannot be and not be at the same time. It can't be a baby for you and not a baby for me at the same time, at the same place. The principle of objective evidence that says if you want to define something objectively instead of subjectively, depending on, who's doing the defining, which gets us all into trouble. If you want an objective definition, what is it really by nature? Then you need to look at all the data. You can't just look at the material manifestation of the thing you're defining. You have to look at all the publicly verifiable evidence, okay? So we call this the principle of objective evidence. You need to have evidence that other people can verify, and you need to include all of that evidence. And that leads to this principle, complete explanation. You have to move beyond just the physical definition of a human person when you're dealing with human beings, because we have a transcendent nature. And it's very obvious. We can be creative. We can be loving. We can be self-sacrificial. We can be generous. We can aspire to goods beyond the material and beyond the finite. We can have a concept of the infinite, and we can connect with the infinite through art and through music and through, through drama and literature and through our spirit and our soul, which we know, which we sense, and we can feel the connection of the eternal through our souls. Okay, so the best theory of any being or anything you're trying to define is going to be the one that explains the most data. All right, so all of this will lead to a definition of the human person that ultimately includes the human person. And again, I'll show you later where you can go through all of this curriculum to see how that works. I just want to take you through, there are 3 principles of ethics that we teach. Once you know who a person is, and then you know that the meaning of my life is to live for level 3 and 4 above level 1 and 2, to do the good beyond myself for the other and not to sacrifice the other for myself, then it's kind of important that I live by certain ethical principles. I need some rules and guides to direct me in how to treat other human beings, whom I care for and whom I've just said I want to do the good for. How do I do that? Well, this is the most basic one, the principle of non-maleficence. First, do no harm. And if a harm is unavoidable, minimize it. The principle of consistent ends and means, you may know this as the ends do not justify the means. You cannot use an evil method to get to a good end. Why? Because the evilness of the method will undermine the goodness you're trying to do. Okay, so you cannot say that, in order to get to the good end of advancing my career, a child must die, right? I'll have to abort the baby because he's in the way of my career. That's a good end, but an evil means. And so this would explain, why you can't do that. And then there's the principle of full human potential, which was first articulated by Bartolome de las Casas in defense of the Native Americans against the Spanish conquistadors who wanted to enslave and torture them and even killed them when they resisted. And he said, no, you cannot do that on the grounds you're using, that they are less developed, that they have more primitive forms of mathematics and architecture and music or whatever. You cannot do that because every group of human beings' value or worth is commensurate with, is equal to what they could achieve if they reach their highest potential. If you taught mathematics to this group of people, they could learn it, right? If they had access to scriptures, they could learn it. You can't say that somebody is less human because they are less developed. Okay? You cannot say that an unborn child is less human or less of a person than I am because he is less developed. You have to consider what that being could achieve if he reached his fullest actualization or his fullest potential. That gives you the worth of the being right now. Okay, so those are three principles of ethics, and they lead to three principles of of rights. There's the principle of natural rights, that we all human persons possess natural rights, human rights by nature. They're not given by government. They cannot be taken away. They can only be violated. And what are they? Well, those rights are life, liberty, and property. And there's an ordering of them called the fundamentality of rights, or the hierarchy or prioritization of rights. Life is more fundamental than liberty because without life, you can't have liberty. And liberty is more fundamental than property because without personal liberty, you can't own property. So there's a proper ordering to those rights that helps you when those rights conflict. This is why life must be protected before the right to liberty or the freedom of choice. And then there's the principle of limits to freedom. One person's freedoms cannot impose an undue burden upon another person's freedoms or groups of freedoms. Or groups' freedoms. So these are the 10 principles that we teach, and we've developed an entire curriculum on how to teach that. And I want to show you what happens to people when they go through this curriculum, because we've actually done quantitative analyses of our audiences. When we ask them this question, no one should tell you that a certain act is good or evil because morality is a matter of personal opinion. About 74% of our young audiences, this is high school age audiences, agree with that statement before going through our curriculum. After we take them through this education of the heart through the 4 levels of happiness, and then the education of the mind through the 10 universal principles, those statistics change dramatically. 55% of the audience agrees. We gain 45% of the audience disagreeing with that statement. And that's after only going through 2 weeks of the education with them, not the whole full program, which usually lasts 6 weeks. True happiness comes from love of others and or God over sex, money, power, success, etc. When we pose this to them in our high school audiences, 56% of our kids agree with this. And these are mostly kids coming from Christian schools. 56 agree that this is where happiness comes from. True happiness comes from love of others and or God over sex, money, power, success. That's good, but 44% disagree. That's pretty scary. After going through our education, 91% of them agree with this statement. A fetus is a human being with the same right to life as everyone else. Prior to our education, 51% agree, about half and half. And afterwards, we can move that needle to 86% of students agreeing with that statement. And assisted suicide should be against the law. 54% agree with that prior to going through our education, and 66% after. So these are some really great statistics. And now I want to talk to you a little bit about what we have to help you educate yourself and then to help educate others.